Sure.
Okay, let's hear
So
from
what
Jesse.
the question was, do you agree with this statement? Quote, I wish Trump's assassin hadn't missed.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Really glad you're here for this one because this might be one of the most heated exchanges we have covered in a while. So what you are about to watch is a panel debate where Jesse and the right-leaning side go head-to-head with Connor, Tom, and Kat over which side of the political spectrum actually carries more of a culture of violence. And it gets intense fast because Connor admits something on camera about his own feelings toward political figures that completely flips the argument on its head before it even gets going. Jesse comes locked and loaded with data that nobody on the other side was prepared for. And the back and forth that follows is genuinely one of those moments where you can see someone getting cornered in real time. Do yourself a favor and stay all the way through. The part that hit me hardest is not where you would expect it, and I promise it is worth it. Also, I am genuinely curious. Drop in the comments where in the world you are watching this from. We get people from so many different places, and I love seeing it every single time. All right, let us get into it.
Connor, let's get it rolling.
Yeah, so I think that we need to differentiate the stats for what Jesse said. And what I would be curious is how those questions were phrased. Because, for instance, if Donald Trump had been killed in Butler, Pennsylvania, I think that would be bad. I think it'd be bad for the country. I think it would normalize political violence and all that kind of stuff. I wouldn't cry over it at fucking all, okay? And this is where I kind of get frustrated with the conservatives is extrajudicial violence is what we're talking about. Extra legal violence is what we're talking about. And we can probably all agree that that's bad. But then when the left wing, because they're bleeding hearts, come to you with legal violence or legal death, you guys can be very abrasive about it. As an example, screwing over Ukraine the way that we did, having J.D. Vance backstab Ukraine and us cut off aid to Ukraine that arguably killed thousands or tens of thousands of innocent Ukrainian civilians. Nobody on the right wing gives a shit about that. PEPFAR being cut, which is 0.16% of the federal budget. It costs $6.5 billion in order to run. That got cut. That's projected to kill 3 million people over the next 5 years. I can't get a single conservative to give a shit about that because they're not Americans. So they're not real people. So they did, who cares if they die? So this whole like moral frogging over, oh, if Trump gets shot, you're not crying. Yeah, you're right. I'm not, because Trump arguably has killed millions and definitely hundreds of thousands of people through incompetence and stupidity.
I would love to take that one.
You bet.
So my entire position on this could be summed up literally by just quoting everything that he just said. And I'd be like, there you go, right there, which is that the left's position is that Trump and anybody who supports Trump are so abhorrent that they don't care if they get murdered. Like, I don't look at the country that way. I look at it like the left is a bunch of people I disagree with who I think have, currently, I don't know, are very confused about what real violence is. They also think that that's a big part of it as well. It's like where, I don't understand how could anybody say that like it's okay for people to laugh about a guy who gets murdered at the Butler rally in front, and his corpse falls on his kids and his wife, and they're like, "Fuck, f that guy," because he's at a MAGA rally. Like, that is insane.
Wait. Hold. But I want you to deal with what I just said, okay? Because what you're saying is a guy gets shot in Butler, Pennsylvania, a firefighter gets shot, and he's dead, and people are callous about his death, okay? What I'm telling to you is that through Trump's incompetence, there are hundreds of thousands or millions of people who are dying.
Prove it.
And that is like water off of a duck's ass. And even in your own response, you're just like, oh, well, I only care about this level of death. I don't, like you didn't even address the fact that I just told you the Trump administration is responsible for hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of preventable deaths. You didn't even acknowledge it.
I didn't acknowledge that because we could play that game all day with every politician in the history of the world. Like, oh, Biden did blah, blah, blah. He's responsible for this, blah, 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 blah. It's about how our side reacts to those things. If you're telling me that you think that there is an administration in the history of America that we couldn't play the, oh, they sent this money over to this country and they used that money to murder blah 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 blah, and if they cut this thing, then this many people died. Like it's an endless
bad.
I do want to
argument
hold on
back
one
and
sec.
forth every single time.
This is the moment the whole argument collapses, and the wild part is it happens because of what Connor says about himself. Connor opens wanting to challenge how the survey questions were worded, and look, that is actually a fair thing to question. Methodology matters? But then he says something that completely destroys his own case. Connor said this, I wouldn't cry over it at all. He is talking about a prominent political figure being targeted with political violence. He said this himself, unprompted, while making the case that his side does not accept that kind of violence. You have to understand something. If you are trying to argue that your side does not normalize indifference toward political violence, you cannot in the same breath admit on camera that you would personally feel nothing. That is not a question being worded wrong. That came directly out of Connor's own mouth in real time. And here is what people do not realize. The second Connor said that, Jesse did not even need his statistics anymore. Connor proved the core argument for him. Jesse responded by pointing out that this is exactly the framing, that certain political figures are considered so harmful that their loss of life just does not register. That is a genuinely dangerous way to think about other human beings. Then Connor escalates even further. He makes a sweeping claim that a former president was responsible for the loss of hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of lives through incompetence. And Jesse responds with 2 words. Jesse said this, prove it. And that is where it stops. No data, no source, no follow-up, just a massive claim dropped into the room, and the conversation moves on like nothing happened. This is the part that blows my mind. You cannot hold yourself out as the rational, evidence-based side and then make claims that large with zero accountability attached. That is not how serious debate works.
I do want to jump in just because I know Connor, one of the things that Connor brought up as well and that I'm curious about is he had asked about the wording of some of these surveys. I don't know if you have it offhand. I don't expect you to have all these printed and laying in front of you, Jesse. But Connor, it sounds like you're saying...
Yeah, I'm saying in reference to the surveys, I would be curious about it, because if you ask me, do I think that assassinating political figures is good? The obvious answer is no, and I think the basically 95% of the country is going to answer it, including like socialists and communists and revolutionaries. They're probably still going to say that in general political assassinations are bad. But if you say, hey, are you going to mourn the death of Donald Trump or J.D. Vance or Elon Musk, the answer is going to be no. And I include myself in that.
Sometimes the framing from what I've seen has been things like, do you feel it's ever justified, to remove somebody, for their actions or for, the threat that they possess, right? And if that's not specific enough, that could take, if somebody asks me that question, while I'm very, very, very anti-violence, but if we're talking about, a dictator of a country, my answer to that is probably going to be different than, just a democratically elected. Yeah.
We can all come up with the extremities: Pol Pot, Joseph Stalin, Adolf Hitler. Those are all people who, if they were extrajudicially assassinated, it would probably be a net good on society.
Back to the survey, though.
So the survey, the way it's framed is this. It says, is it acceptable to be happy about a public figure's death? And then 24% of liberals said yes, 4% of conservatives, and 3% of very conservatives said yes.
But I think even within
that is
questionnaire,
very different than thinking it's justifiable, though. And that is something that we see more often on the right, is that when
they said happy
shootings happen, or
okay.
Happy. Yes, exactly. And that's what I'm saying, is that being happy about the outcome of something doesn't mean that you're actually encouraging it. So it's rare that Democratic leaders or even like podcasters or politicians are using violent rhetoric, but it is common that somebody like Donald Trump says, we should punch that guy, the police should be more violent with these people. And then even when it comes to protests like January 6th, more than 25% of the Republicans believed that January 6th rioting was justified, whereas
And many people were
10% of liberals thought that BLM rioting was justified. So they not only engage in it, but then justify it afterwards, whereas liberals don't justify it, but they might be okay with it and like think it's or be happy about it.
These are
And
actually
part of
pretty
it-
straightghtforward. Like these are real straightforward. Like the
Okay,
one about
but I also
Donald
wanna
Trump being
call-
killed.
It's
The
not-
way it
I
was,
just
I wanna
hold on.
call
It's not
I do want to hear.
straightforward.
I do
Can
want to
you-
hear from Jesse though, because we did hear from two or so of you.
yeah.
But,
so
but I
the
wanted
way
to
it was
actually
framed
respond to what
was
I'm saying, the difference
Wait,
between
well, hold on.
justifying it and being happy about it.
sure.
Okay, let's hear
so
from
what
Jesse
the
then.
question was, do you agree with this statement? Quote, I wish Trump's assassin hadn't missed. And 1/3 of Democrats said agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think for sure.
Like,
How
yeah,
is
like,
that
so
not
you guys are in that
justifying
group.
it? How is it not justifying it? I think,
Like-
Tom, you said something like, well, happiness. These the leftists can be happy about it, but that doesn't mean that they're not justifying it. That doesn't mean that they're not encouraging it. But you would have to, what's the delineation then between being happy about something and speaking openly happy about it? Like, yeah, I'm happy that this happened. Then justifying it. What's that delineation? Like, what's the
Yeah.
distinction between the two?
I think it was yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I think it was
Go ahead.
quite disgusting to watch, obviously, how people were so gleeful about, say, the murder of Charlie Kirk, or when there was an attempted assassination of Trump, where I would say there is a distinction, though. And by the way, I've certainly seen some of these sentiments on the right towards left figures as well. For example, when Nancy Pelosi's husband was bludgeoned, there was all this like crazy rhetoric as well. But, I will concede that the reaction was really awful. However, at the same time, if we're talking about figures on the left who were representatives of the party, significant people who are members of institutions, they immediately renounced very clearly all political violence. We didn't necessarily see that same action on the right.
Now Connor is still working to chip away at the survey data, and this is where his own argument starts actively working against him. He raises the concern that the poll questions might be too vague or too leading to be reliable. That is actually a reasonable concern to raise, but then he does something that is genuinely hard to recover from. Connor said this: "Are you going to mourn the passing of these political figures?" The answer is going to be no, and I include myself in that. Read that back slowly. He is using his own honest answer, which matches exactly what the surveys were capturing, as evidence that the surveys cannot be trusted. That is not a rebuttal. That is a confirmation wrapped inside a criticism. And that is the setup for what Jesse does next. He does not reach for a vague question. He does not use something that could be reframed a dozen ways. Jesse brings up a direct written statement that people were asked to agree or disagree with. Jesse said this: "Do you agree with the statement, I wish the assassin hadn't missed?" And 1/3 of respondents on that side said agree. 1/3. That is not a fringe number. That is not a margin of error. That is a measurable portion of a political group agreeing with a statement about political violence directed at a specific individual. Here is what I want to zero in on with Kat's response. She argues that political leaders on her side were quick and clear in condemning all of it. And honestly, some of them were. I will give her that. But then Kat said this: "We didn't necessarily see that same action on the right." And this lands strangely because Jesse had just detailed a specific case, a sitting elected official who made explicitly threatening comments about a political opponent, doubled down every single time he was given a chance to walk it back, kept every endorsement, and still won his race. If that level of leadership failure does not count as the right failing to denounce, then I genuinely do not know what the standard is.
I want to hear from
That's
Connor.
not true.
Yeah.
I also want to hear from Taylor at some point too. Go ahead, Connor.
Yeah. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to drag it back to the question, and I wanted to call baloney on it. Okay. If this was asked within the past year, okay, then everybody was thinking Trump when they answered this survey. And I guarantee you, if you actually thought, oh, crap, sorry, I hit a button. Can you come back to me? I literally just hit a button.
Yeah,
Taylor-
that's totally fine. So
Okay.
I still want to answer on my question though, Tom, and maybe Kay. But I'm sorry, what's your name is? I only see a letter K.
Cat.
Cat.
You can go with Kat,
Tom and Kat. So basically, what you're saying is you're saying, well, you know, the left, we didn't encourage it, so therefore it's not just, we didn't justify it. But you know, some of the people on the left were, a lot of them were definitely happy about these certain deaths and these BLM riots and things like that. They were happy about it. I'm asking you, what's the delineation between happiness? Like someone is saying that they're happy about it, you're watching these videos and they're saying like, oh yeah, I'm glad this happened. How is that not encouraging it? Which is, how is that not justifying the death of these things, of these
Are we going
events?
to, so would we say that words are violence, for example? This is where it becomes sort of tricky, because I've heard, I mean, in terms of
I
rhetoric.
didn't say words are, you're
No, I understand.
straw-manning my position. I didn't say words are violent. I'm asking you, actually, before I do so, steel man my position so you understand. I don't know if you understand. Steel man.
No,
for me.
I understand your position that the culture in which people encourage and laugh at somebody's death or are gleeful about it is an environment where it might be easier to take somebody's life, right? That's essentially your position. Am I correct?
Yes, but what I'm saying is, the position, to make it clear, is that in itself, those people would be justifying it. What you're doing,
I mean,
what Tom is doing, what you and Tom are doing, I don't know if counterpoints to this, but what you and Tom are doing, you're saying that, well, they're happy about it, but they're not justifying it because they're not encouraging it. So
I didn't say they're not
between-
justifying. I didn't say.
Well,
they're
that's
not
what Tom said.
justifying.
Tom
Well,
said that
I
they're
did
not
say this.
justifying it.
Yes, I did say this, and I'm saying that there's a difference between having a moral, like a moral prescription for this, and then having a feeling about the outcome. And so, if you're saying that, like, oh, somebody dies, and I didn't like that person, I feel like if they stayed alive, they would do a lot of harm. But that doesn't mean that I'm okay with people just killing others because they're afraid they're going to do harm in the future, because that would have like a catastrophic outcome for society if we're all just running around, especially as a content creator. I don't want people running around killing political content creators. And so this is something that I'm totally against morally. I think it's going to be a bad mark for society. But if somebody dies that I think was harmful to society, I might think, well, I mean, it's kind of not such a bad thing that they're gone and no longer causing this harm. But that doesn't mean that I think that is justifiable. It's a moral good.
Yep.
Okay, wait,
I'm
time
having
out,
tech
time out.
issues.
Real
Can you
quick,
guys
real
hear me
quick.
real quick?
Yeah, we could hear you. Counterpoints, real quick. So let me just get this right. You're saying that it isn't bad that they died. So if it isn't bad, what's the opposite of not bad? Then it is
I'm not
good
saying it
that they
isn't
died.
bad.
He's saying that
no, I'm
it's
saying-
not. He's
I'm
saying
the
that he's
action of
not
what it is they're
upset.
doing. The action of killing somebody is bad.
Okay.
Now we hit the most underrated exchange in this entire clip. Jesse puts a direct challenge on the table. He wants to know, what is actually the difference between being happy that something happened and justifying it? And Tom comes back with what sounds like a reasonable answer. He says there is a distinction between having a moral position on an action and simply having a feeling about an outcome. That you can feel okay about a result without endorsing the method that produced it. I understand that argument. But Jesse does not let it sit. He locks in on the actual logic. Tom said this: "It is kind of not such a bad thing that they are gone." And Jesse responds immediately. Jesse said this: "You were saying it isn't bad that they died. So what is the opposite of not bad? Then it is good that they died." And Tom has no clean answer for that, because Jesse just exposed a logical gap that the left keeps trying to live in. This space between not endorsing something and not being remotely bothered by it either. This is worth slowing down on because it connects to something genuinely important. There is a principle in ethics called moral consistency. The idea that you cannot apply one standard of empathy to people you agree with and a completely different standard to people you do not. What Jesse is pointing out is that the left keeps trying to find a middle space where they say, We do not want this. We just are not sad it happened. And that middle space does not survive basic logical pressure. Either the loss of a human being matters regardless of their political beliefs, or it does not. There is no third option. And here is what I think the real underlying point is. History has documented this pattern across multiple societies. The normalization of indifference toward a group of people rarely stays where it starts. It tends to move. You do not need loud voices actively calling for harm. You just need enough quiet ones who stop caring when it happens to the other side. That has been the opening chapter of some very dark periods in recorded history. That is what Jesse is driving at throughout this entire clip. Not just survey numbers, not just poll methodology. He is making the case that the culture of how we talk about political figures and who we choose to extend basic human empathy to carries real consequences. And I think he made that case more effectively here than most people are willing to give him credit for. So what do you guys think of this? Leave your thoughts down in the comments. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.